Oh, me. It is me.
Oh,
I'm used to Dom introing all this stuff. Is this our fourth Toolkit video?
I think so. Do you like calling this strength priority?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's good. Welcome back. Mayhem Performance Coaching, Training Toolkit video number 4, we think. We're getting them all mixed up. But today we're jumping into if you need a bias strength training. So going all the way back to day number 1 or Toolkit video number 1, we talked about using the 70% rule. Very fast recap. That means that general rule of thumb, 70% of your training should be devoted to the biggest weakness or area of opportunity that you have. So I think we went over muscular endurance and gymnastics if that was the area of opportunity. Last time we talked about aerobic training and biasing that with the 70% rule. Now we're gonna talk about strength. And shout out to, and I can't forget the guy's name who emailed me and said you guys have done it for muscle endurance, you've done it for aerobic. Now we're doing it for strength. Will you do it for strength? So we're gonna dive into that. Strength is, they're all complicated topics and there's all so many wormholes we can get into. So today we're gonna focus again just on that general picture of how do we bias it in training? How would we lay out somebody's week based on the 70% rule as a guide if you need to get stronger? And then over time with these videos, we'll dive into some of those wormholes, but we're gonna go pretty big picture for now. So we're actually gonna use me, 25-year-old Jake as the example, because we gotta have some numbers to play with. If you just say strength priority, there's so many what ifs and it depends on the person. So Dom is gonna go through my old strength numbers because if I do it, I'll get so insecure about it. So I'm gonna let Dom break them down a little bit and then you're gonna see where the glaring weakness and hole is that I had and we're gonna show you how we would have addressed it for young Jake back in the day.
And what's important about this too is, which is why Jake can be a good avatar for us, is just like also understanding his background. So we're also talking about like a football player. So we're gonna see some typical things of his previous background prior to CrossFit. So anybody that needs strength priority, or really when you're trying to determine any weaknesses, think about what your background is, right? Like I have former gymnasts that I also coach. I don't need a lot of gymnastics skill with them. I just have to teach them how to do the CrossFit versions of gymnastics and they crush stuff. So know what your background is and that will help when you guys look at these numbers. Deadlift 525, strict press 195, look at the squat. Back squat 385, front squat 320, snatch 255, clean and jerk 315, jerk 345, bench 350. There's other numbers we can pull from here, but
real
very
quick,
typical. Go ahead.
All the bros will understand this right here, right? Oh, what did I do back in the day? We benched, man. Yeah. Of course, you got to bench.
Bench and pull.
As long as this is 350, the rest of the numbers don't really matter at the end of the day. Just bench press and all your problems will go away. So that's what I thought.
Right.
Justification.
Didn't work out in CrossFit, but yeah.
So for the CrossFit athlete, when we're looking at this, it makes a lot of sense right here. If we look at the clean and the snatch specifically, what I'm looking at here is like the percentage of this squat to the front squat is easy. Like he's gonna be able to stand that up every time. That's not a hard squat. And the upper body capability to stabilize that in the shoulders, if he has good positions, is very high. And also the ability to pull it off the ground is very easy, right? We would also expect, and this is something I actually asked Jake before we started the video, is actually his power clean was above this. Why? Because the deadlift is here, and if we look at the squats, the percentage of the front squat here to get out of the clean makes a lot of sense, and the jerk is above the clean, which is actually a good thing, but is significantly above the clean because of, again, the upper body pressing strength. So the idea here is we now have an athlete that has a strength priority in the squat. So what we're gonna try to lay out for you guys is what it would look like to build out a strength program using the 70% rule for someone who needs to get their squat in line with these other strength numbers. And that's things you typically want to identify. You could also have an athlete. I was actually the athlete where my back squat and deadlift were a little bit closer, but I needed more of a posterior chain deadlift pulling priority, and I needed a pressing priority. Like my pressing was way behind, and my squat was kind of in the middle. My Olympics were like in line with the squat, but if my pull went up and my press went up, everything was gonna go up. Right? So I needed a double priority. This is a good one because we can look specifically just at one thing and kind of align that all around. So if you want to kind of break it down what we want to do.
Yeah, again, just simple like jumping in the 70% rule here. We're gonna take 3 out of the 5 days a week of training and devote it to squatting. So we've got day 1 here on Monday, and then again, we've talked about this in past videos. We like to set it up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then if we had our top 2 priority days, it's coming off a rest day. So Monday coming off Sunday rest day, Friday coming off Thursday rest day. So we're gonna put our top 2 on Monday and Friday. So we've got back squat, heavy absolute strength training here. And then we've got a clean day on Friday. So we're getting some speed strength, little bit of a more sport-specific touch with bilateral squatting. And then our kind of third priority day we'll sandwich in the middle here on Wednesday, where we might be a little more fatigued, but we're gonna put in unilateral squatting or single leg squats. And use some fancy language, I would actually use like a higher mechanical advantage movement. Yeah. It's a fancy way of saying a single leg movement where you can actually move some good load. Because there's a lot of single leg movements, like a step up would be an example, but I might be using like 50-pound dumbbells in each hand. Whereas right here, I'd be doing like some heavy front foot elevated split squats or something like that, where I can actually load it up at 185, to 225 and move some load there. Otherwise, it just gets kind of silly. So those would be the three priority days. Dom, you want to talk about where you would start rep range wise here on Monday?
And then just to even throw that in here, guys, if there's like some technical issues on a day where I'm doing back squat, you could potentially start this athlete with some light like snatch tech. We're just focusing on the main things here of like, we need to back squat, we need to get some front squatting in, and we need to get some single leg knee flexion.
Good point. This is definitely just the priorities. I should have prefaced that. Like, we would definitely have some snatch touches in here, some clean touches, some jerk like there's a lot more going on, but we're just trying to highlight the priority.
Yeah. So trying to decide like, okay, where do I start? I just finished quarterfinals, or I just finished semifinals, or I just finished the open. I'm going into my strength training. Do I do Russian volume training? Do I do a hypertrophy cycle? Do I do 10s, 5s? Do I go right into conjugate method? Where the heck do I start to get strong? I think what we would look at here is like, and Jake brought up a good point here, is like, A, what's your training age? And B, based on your training age, like what's gonna be most effective for you to move loads? Someone like myself, I came out of more of a bodybuilding background. I was not doing a ton of squatting. I was worried about more like physique. So I was doing lots of high rep leg workouts using leg press or whatever machines. So when I first came into CrossFit, like 10s or higher even sometimes worked really well for me. Doing higher rep range back squatting. Over the course of 13 years of CrossFit, this became less effective and I needed heavier loads, right? Opposite for him, he came in squatting a ton. This never did really anything for him except make him really tired and fatigued because of the amount of volume he's accumulating there. Probably even some joint issues potentially.
Sure. Yeah.
Versus kind of getting right into this like 3 to 5 rep range right out the gate and sustaining that over a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was a newbie to CrossFit. My training age was relatively high. I've been lifting weights since I was 12 years old. When I started CrossFit, I'd never missed more than 2 days of lifting since I was 12. So by the time I started CrossFit, I've been working out for 10 years straight already. And so you put me on a really high volume squat cycle and I would just get burned out and not very strong. And Dom ironically we didn't even talk about it, but I had really bad patellar tendinopathy, tendinosis in both of my knees. So yeah, I had to be very careful with how much volume I was doing in my squatting. So I would actually respond much better to 5s and downs, some heavier loads, higher intensity and lower volume overall. But again, that is training age dependent, not just how many years you've been training, but like Dom said, the background that you had, because all of my 10 years in training was all in football. We were doing a bunch of heavy power cleans and squats all the time coming into it. So
perfect. And then that same rule applies to all 3 days of squatting, right? Like where you want to choose your rep ranges, because that's going to affect your loading. Okay.
I think the next part we were going to talk about is just like what do we got going on Tuesday and Saturday? You might be thinking, well, what do I do with my upper body? And man, Jake's so strong in his press. Does he even need to touch it? Well, of course you still need to touch it. You want to maintain it. And there's a lot of research on this too. Like there's mixed touches. Well, I know Louis Simmons always said, like, as a rule of thumb, founder of Westside Barbell, like every 10 days. I think some of the research has shown 2 to 3 weeks. But we would probably touch it 1 day a week on a Tuesday. We put like a little upper maintenance there. I think we'll save that for a future toolkit video of what does upper maintenance strength look like.
Yeah.
I know something that would work really well for me, and I've done it in the past, is a conjugate method where I would just build like a heavy double, triple, maybe even heavy single of different press movements and just change it up every week. And that would be a good way of me just maintaining where I'm currently at. And I would only do that 1 day a week, because if you look at Saturday over here, we're not even doing that a second time. Dom put in gymnastics here, and he gets it really well. Like back in the day, coming from a football background, like I need some additional touches on upper gymnastics, more than I did upper strength work. And then we've got Dom. I'll let you jump into the aerobic. How much aerobic you'd be doing, what modalities you would choose, and how you kind of lay that out.
So I just shorthanded it for aerobic maintenance. But one thing I really kind of wanted to press is if you're someone with massive strength holds, you don't have to do aerobic fitness every single day. You don't. I know that's a big part of CrossFit, but this Monday and this Wednesday can just be strength training. It can be. And then we can use this aerobic maintenance work just on a monostructural machine if we want to, with like a row or a ski. And we talked about this a little bit before. The idea behind that is it's a little more upper body prominent. That's not definitely the case with rowing, but rowing is also a little more of like a pulling movement, more similar to deadlift. So I'd probably go ski here, row here, just because we have a little lower pull maintenance here if we're gonna touch a deadlift or some type of pull on Wednesday. But the main idea for that is to prioritize our squatting strength. So we want to do the things that are going to affect that the least. And then we do still have a little sport specific touch in here on Friday because we are training for the sport of CrossFit. So again, it's kind of very similar to like CrossFit maintenance, not whether that's a thing or not.
What do we typically, I mean, I just let people throw it out.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I just go constantly varied, functional movement, execute high intensity. I just do all over the place.
Because that is our sport and that's what we're training for. So we don't want to lose that.
One note too on the aerobic maintenance, just to get a little mini nerdy, I guess, for a second. Why are we saying monostructural? Why machine? Because machine is mostly concentric only. So you think about a bike, you're just pushing down on the bike. There's no eccentrics. Eccentrics, think about when I'm doing a curl, when I'm lowering the curl, that's what's actually causing all the microscopic tears in my muscle. That's what's causing the most muscle damage. Concentric movements do not cause as much muscle damage. You get less fatigue in the muscle. You're going to be able to recover from it quicker, and you're going to be able to get stronger. And that, again, research has shown that over and over. The best modality for aerobic maintenance while you're trying to get strong is going to be machine work, and then really technically the most concentric you can get, the better. Like running would be a bad example, right? Because there's a lot of eccentrics and wear and tear. It's hard to run and get your back squat really high. That would be probably the worst combo for getting your squat higher. It can be done if you're a newbie, you're detrained, you've been sitting on the couch and you haven't worked out for a while, or maybe steroids probably would help. Yeah. Yeah. You know that, right?
Yeah. Tons of good.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, as usual, guys, like strength, this was probably the fastest one we've done because this is where you fall into the trap of going, it depends. And I hate that phrase because sometimes it robs us of good teaching. And so that's why we had to use an example today. But I'm gonna end every video like this. I'm still getting emails. Like I got one yesterday and I think we posted the aerobic video like 2 months ago or something. But if you have questions and you wanna send me your strength numbers, send them to Dom, actually. I'm just joking. Send them to me at jakefoster@mayhemnation.com. I'll send you a video. I'll walk you through what I think you need to be prioritizing, and I'll give you some general ideas of how I would map it out in your week. We love to teach. That's why we do these videos. It's so fun for us to talk about it. We could stand here for forever, so email me with all the questions that you have about it.
And there's a million strength details we could go into, but I think for anybody watching this video, there are some just simple things. Like this is simple. Stop conditioning every single day. Eat and lift. Like that's how you get strong.
Eat, lift, and lift with linear progression.
Yeah.
Do simple linear progressions. And when it stops working, then do something fancier. But do simple until simple stops working. And upcoming topics, if any of this is like, well, what about this and what about that? Comment it in the comments below and tell us what you want to talk about, and we'll cover it in the future. That's all.